think it'll be all right now. Boy, you sure did a nice job on it, Jimmy.
I'll say you did. Did you do it all by yourself? Oh, I had to ask what to do once in a while, but I did all the work. Didn't I, Mr. Fix-It?
Every bit of it.
Can I hold it, Mr. Fix-It?
Oh, sure, Steve. Here.
Boy, what I wouldn't give to have this. I'll still trade you my bike. It's brand new. I know it is, Steve. It's worth more than the plane, but I just don't want to trade. Oh, why don't you swap them? You can build another one. Yeah, I suppose I could, but it wouldn't be like this one. I'll tell you what, I'll give you my bike and $10, okay? I got that much at home. Nah, thanks anyway, Steve. I guess I just don't want to trade. If you're not going to trade it, let's fly it. Yeah, let's go. Okay, let's go to the park. Yeah.
Aren't you going to go with him?
Oh, what's the use?
Steve. Come here, pal. Come on inside. I want to talk to you for a little bit. You're not in any particular hurry, are you, Steve?
No.
Why don't you sit down there for a minute? You say your bike's brand new?
Yeah, and it's got everything on it. I got it for my birthday.
Oh, who gave it to you?
Mother and Dad.
Mm-hmm. How would they feel if you just turned around and traded it off, huh?
Well, they wouldn't care once they swapped the ring they gave me, and they didn't say anything.
That doesn't mean they didn't feel anything.
Huh?
I know how I'd feel if I were your father.
Yeah?
I think I'd be kind of hurt, Steve.
You would?
Yes, I would.
Well, why, Mr. Fix-It?
Well, because of what it represented. You don't follow me, do you? When we like something, we say we're being sentimental about it. Now, that's why Jimmy didn't want to trade you that model. It meant something to him, a lot of work, an accomplishment. And you know, Steve, that bike out there represents something, too. Two people who love you enough to give you what you want.
But the helicopter's what I want.
That's what you want now, but before you got your bike, you wanted that, too, didn't you?
Yeah, but, well, how did you know?
It's only natural to want what we don't have, Steve, but there's a danger involved. If we want something too much, we're liable to do something we shouldn't do to get it. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I think so.
Would you like for me to tell you a story about a man who wanted something too much?
A story? Yeah.
It's a true story, Steve. A story about a king. A man by the name of Ahab, a ruler of the land of Israel. King Ahab was one of these unfortunate people who have everything their hearts desire. We read about the king right here in the Bible.
And this really happened?
That's right, Steve. Right here in the 21st chapter of the first book of Kings, we read the story. Now, while I tell you the story, how would you like to look at some pictures?
I'd like that, Mr. Fix-It.
Okay, if you'll open this book and take a look at the first picture, you'll see King Ahab looking out of his palace window. Just think, Steve, everywhere the king looked, he could see things that belonged to him. Things of real beauty, costly things. There was nothing the king wanted that the king didn't have.
Is this the right picture?
Yes, that's the one. That's King Ahab looking out of his palace window.
I guess I just don't understand.
What is it you don't understand, Steve?
Well, if he had everything he wanted, wouldn't he be happy? That man's not happy.
One of the lessons we have to learn, Steve, is that having things doesn't necessarily make us happy. It's what's in here that counts. King Ahab was a wicked, sinful king. Why, we read in the Bible where he did more to make God angry with him than all the other kings before him. King Ahab was unhappy because he had a wicked, sinful heart. Now, you turn the next page and tell me what you see.
Oh, boy. This is pretty, Mr. Fix-It. Is that the king again?
That's the king, Steve, admiring the beauty of his summer home. The flowers and the trees and the beautiful green grass were more of those things King Ahab had gathered unto himself. Where in all the world was there a garden as beautiful as this? And it was his, all his. You know, every time he thought about it, the king was greatly impressed by a sense of his own importance. Until one day, he happened to notice something. Right next to his own garden, Right on the other side of the wall, there was a beautiful vineyard. Oh, the vines were heavy with fruit. It was good land. The owner had kept it in good condition. Right away, King Ahab wanted the vineyard. Why, it was an ideal situation. Good land right next to his own garden. Why, he could tear out those grapevines and plant whatever he wanted to. Greatly excited by his new discovery, King Ahab lost no time in finding the owner of the vineyard, a man by the name of Naboth. And the king told Naboth how he wanted to buy the vineyard, to make it a part of his palace grounds. But Naboth explained to the king that this land had been given to him by his father. This particular vineyard had been in the family for many years, and Naboth didn't feel that he wanted to sell, regardless of what the king might offer.
Why didn't Ahab take the land, Mr. Fix-It? He was king, wasn't he?
Yes, Ahab was king, but there were certain things not even a king could do. According to the law, Naboth's inheritance was his very own. Not even the king could take it away from him. So the unhappy king was even more unhappy than he was before. The beautiful things that did belong to him were nothing now. All the king could think about was that vineyard and how the owner had refused to sell it to him. And the more Ahab thought about it, the more it upset him. And by the time the king reached the palace, he was miserable. He went to his bedroom and pouted. He lay on his bed with his face to the wall. Why, he wouldn't even eat his food. And the servants decided that perhaps they should go and tell the queen.
What could she do that the king couldn't do?
Queen Jezebel was a very wicked woman. She was cruel and selfish. King Ahab ruled Israel, but the queen ruled the king. When Jezebel heard what was bothering the king, she pampered him like he was a small child and told him not to fret about it. She'd figure out a way that he could have what he wanted, and she did too. Jezebel sent a letter to the rulers of the city in which Naboth lived. In the letter, Jezebel lied to the rulers, telling them Naboth had spoken against God and the king. And in the letter, Jezebel recommended that Naboth be stoned to death. Naboth tried to tell the rulers that he was a God-fearing man. He would never do such a thing. But the queen had seen to it that there were 2 false witnesses there who told the people they had seen Naboth do such a thing. So the people carried Naboth outside the city walls and stoned him to death.
They killed him?
Yes, and by doing that, they made it possible for King Ahab to possess the land. You see, Steve, now the land no longer had an owner. All the king had to do was to go and take it.
You mean he still wanted it, even after the queen did what she did?
Yes, King Ahab was a very selfish man.
And that's in the Bible?
Right here in the Old Testament, but listen, son, don't you think for a minute that God let him get by with that. Turn the page and see what happened. King Ahab didn't lose much time in going to possess the land. And of course, with Naboth out of the way, there was no one left who even thought of stopping the king. But God couldn't let the king get by with something like this. God sent Elijah the prophet to tell the king of the curse he had brought upon himself. Because of the evil things Ahab had done, God decided to take away the king's prosperity and to remove every trace of Ahab's family from the face of the earth.
What happened to the king and queen?
Well, a short time later, the king was killed on the field of battle, and then one by one, the members of his family died, including the queen.
I feel kind of funny, Mr. Fix-It.
Why, Steve?
Did I sort of remind you of King Ahab?
No, and I don't want you to go away from here thinking that either. If you'll remember, pal, we were talking about the danger of wanting something too much, remember? You know, pal, I think the story of King Ahab is a wonderful example of what can happen to us if we don't learn at an early age how to control our wants, our desires. You see what I mean, don't you, Steve?
Yeah, I really think I do, Mr. Fix-It. And you know what? I'm sure glad I didn't trade that bike. I've been thinking about how much you wanted the model. Thanks, Jimmy, but I've changed my mind. You mean you don't like the model? Oh, I like it. I like it very much. But, well, I like my bike, too. I think I better keep it. Well, I wasn't going to swap. What I was going to say was, I'll help you build one just like this if you want. That is, if Mr. Fix-It will help us. Do you think I could? Sure. Tell him how easy it is, Mr. Fix-It.
Well, it's not too hard, you know.
Open the door, will you, Mike? Sure thing, Deacon. Be glad to. Quit calling me Deacon. I was only kidding you. I know, but I'm getting tired of hearing it. I know those other kids mean it. Hi, Mr. Fix-It.
Hiya, fellas. What's up?
Oh, I got a busted bike. I think somebody busted it for me. Just look at the spokes in that wheel, Mr. Fix-It.
Why, these have been deliberately cut. Who'd do a thing like that?
We think we know, but we're not sure. Yeah, we think it's one of Jimmy's old friends.
Oh?
Don't know why they can't let him alone. They make fun of him, too, don't they?
Now, wait a minute, fellas. Why would Jimmy's old buddies want to do a thing like this to him?
I can tell you why, Mr. Fix-It. We're not buddies anymore. We used to be, but not anymore.
What's the matter, Jimmy?
Well, they're okay, I guess, but they do things a Christian shouldn't do.
Like what, son?
They swear and tell dirty stories. And you know what, Mr. Fix-It?
No, what, Jimmy?
They don't want to take no for an answer. Either you do what they want you to do, or they make fun of you.
Yes, I think I know what you mean, son.
And you know what else? They call him Deacon Johnson.
I suppose all of this is because you go to Sunday school and church, along with the fact that you don't do those other things, huh?
Yeah, I suppose so.
Well, Jimmy, this problem of yours, and it's a real one, son, is one that every Christian boy and girl faces today.
Has it always been that way, Mr. Fix-It?
Yes, since the very beginning of time. In fact, we read about this sort of thing, which is called intolerance, from the first book of the Bible to the last. Say, how would you boys like to hear about 3 other fellows that had their troubles, too, huh?
See, I told you he'd tell us a story.
Bobby,
Yes, sir.
get me my storybook, will you?
Yes, sir. Still in the same place?
Same place. Now, let's see. Get a place for you fellows to sit. You draw the wagon out, Mike. Jimmy, put your bike right over there. And then you can sit down right here. Thank you, Bobby. Well, now, let's see. Who was Nebuchadnezzar, Mike?
He was king, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm. You know where and when?
Well, you know, sure. He was the king of Babylon. When?
Well, it looks like it's my story from there. The time of Nebuchadnezzar's reign dates back, 600 years before the time of Christ. You know, Nebuchadnezzar had the same trouble a lot of folks have today, boys. He was in love with himself. And, being the ruler of the land, he was able to do something that was utterly fantastic. He had a gigantic statue made of himself, 90 feet tall, and of solid gold.
Wow.
You see all these people gathered round?
Yeah.
Well, these people came from all over the kingdom. There were princes, captains, governors, rulers of the provinces. And you know, fellas, it didn't make any difference whether they wanted to come or not. They had to come. Now, from his throne on the royal pavilion, the king watched all the people assemble. King Nebuchadnezzar must have felt very important just then. All of this was happening because he wanted it to. And this was only the beginning. When the people were all gathered round, the king stood up. The great moment had arrived. By standing up, the king was giving the signal for the decree to be read. So the court trumpeters called the people to attention. And the herald, whose job it was to read the official announcement, stepped forth with a great big scroll in his hands, and as the people listened, they heard the herald read,
O people, nations, languages, hear ye the king's command.
And the herald went on to tell them that at the sound of the musical instruments, they were all to bow down and worship this huge golden image that was there before them. This was to be their God. And the next thing they heard, fellas, was enough to put fear in the hearts of even the bravest men.
Those who disobey will, in the same hour, be burned to death in the fiery furnace.
And so when the musical instruments played, the people fell down and worshiped that golden image. Now there were two Chaldeans worshiping close together, and one of them saw something that made him grab the other one and say, "Look, it's just as we thought. The three of them, see? They're not bowing down to the image of the king. Come, let's tell the king." And that's exactly what they did. They bowed and scraped before the monarch, and then they told him of the three disobedient men they had seen with their own eyes. And they named the men. There was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And they slyly reminded the king that these were the men he had placed over the affairs of Babylon. And the king was very much disturbed. "How dare these men disobey me," he said. "Bring them here. Bring them here at once."
Boy, they're in for it now. Boy, I'll say. Shh. What happened next, Mr. Fix-It?
Well, that's what we're going to find out, Jimmy. You see, the king asked for the three Hebrews to be brought before him. And then he asked Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego if it were true that they had failed to bow down and worship this golden image. And they admitted that it was true. But you know, fellas, old King Nebuchadnezzar's pride was about the most important thing he had. And he offered the three men another chance. He told them that he would spare their lives if they would do as he had commanded. And they answered the king like this: "Our God is able to deliver us out of your hand, O king. But even if he chooses not to, we will never serve your gods or worship your golden image." The king was furious. He commanded that the furnace be made 7 times hotter than it usually was. And then he ordered Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to be taken to the furnace and put to death because of their disobedience. You see, fellows, whenever people try to do the right thing and live the